this and this to start. Okay. Just so they can hear you as well.
Hi, John. Oh, nice to meet you. We're doing a Facebook live stream, so if you go onto Facebook and go to...
Okay, good evening everybody, and just so you know, what you heard right now was, or what you just heard was the Cannon Air Force Base public meeting over the Zoom call. This now is the New Mexico Environment Department's sort of post their presentation. Our meeting with you all this evening. So one, thank you for coming out. I know there are many things that are competing for your time, your family included, work, etc. So thank you for coming out tonight and being here. My name is Jim Kenney. I am the Cabinet Secretary to the New Mexico Environment Department. And we are now on Facebook streaming so that folks who were participating on the call with Cannon Air Force Base can also watch on Facebook what we're talking about here. I wanted you to know that in the event that you have a question that you wanted to ask more privately, we'll be here to answer those questions more privately. So just so you know, we're streaming on Facebook, and we'll have folks who just participated as an audience with Cannon also participating on Facebook as well. But again, thank you for being here. A few reasons why we're doing this event tonight. One is because we want to be here in the community and be with you in person. This is what the state of New Mexico has been doing. We've been coming to Clovis and trying to meet with people in person as we work through the PFAS issues that are in the groundwater. In addition to that, we believe that it is the right thing to do to sit and talk to you in person, just like the Department of Defense does in other military communities around the country. They do this in Michigan, they do this in Pennsylvania, and you don't have to take my word on it. You can go and look at those states and look at what the Air Force is doing in those communities, and they're meeting with you in person, except for in New Mexico, they have not been doing that. And what I think you made a difference in tonight is the first time that I heard them say that they were going to consider meeting face-to-face with the community going forward and offering a live Zoom meeting for those who are outside of New Mexico. So again, I think that's a big step forward. I don't think it's the biggest step. I think that's what should have been happening here in this community all along. But again, you being here and you being active and participating is changing that behavior. So thank you. You owe yourselves a round of applause for that, to be honest. The other couple things that I wanted to say just before I turn to your questions is the PFAS blood testing that we're offering. We've conducted 2 rounds so far for those who live in the, what I'll call like the affected area. And we are now doing a 3rd round of PFAS blood testing. It starts this week. If you've not signed up, we can sign you up this evening. If you're interested or if you have very specific questions, we're happy to explain those to you. It's free of charge. There's no charge to you. You get the test results yourself. You also get a gift card for participation. I think it's a $25 gift card. So we really want you to consider participating. We've had really good results so far with the community embracing that. And to the extent that we have more than 750, we did 500 the first time, we're doing 250 starting this week. To the extent that you have additional folks who want to get PFAS blood testing, we will be here to meet that to do more. We also are doing PFAS well water testing. And we've done about 20 tests so far in the community. We're coming back, I think, next week to do more testing. If you've not signed up, again, it's free of charge. We're happy to do that testing for you. And we can sign you up for that tonight as well. So just know that. Please pass that information to your friends, to your families, to your neighbors, and let them know that those are all options. If you do have PFAS in your well water, and Mexico is looking to install filtration systems and maintain those filtration systems for a period of time. Don't worry about how long that is. It would be my goal that the Department of Defense, through its various litigation, that it, one, started with the state of New Mexico, and two, that we, again, filed against the Department of Defense, but ultimately pick up the tab from that. So let us continue to fight that out in court, but for now, just know you have those options. PFAS blood testing and well water testing, and we're going to then move to look to install filtration systems, and that should buy us some time until this all this legal mess resolves. With respect to the two legal issues, one, if you remember, in January of 2019, the Department of Defense sued the state of New Mexico to say that PFAS was not something that the state of New Mexico had authority to require them to clean up. You are the only community that I know of in the entire United States among 715 plus bases that has received a federal lawsuit. It's completely unfair, it's completely arbitrary, and it infuriates me that that is what happened in this community. But nonetheless, for 5+ years, at the cost of $12+ million, and soon to be another 24 of our legislature, who has been extremely supportive, by the way. Your senators and representatives from your community have been so supportive of the community and have been funding the litigation. So all of New Mexico is paying to defend this community from the litigation. But we should be in for about 30 to 40 million just defending the stance that we do have the authority to say toxic contaminants are not supposed to be in the water. So that's when that lawsuit is in litigation right now. The Department of Defense filed its briefings in what's known as the 10th Circuit, which is the court in Denver. We, as the state of New Mexico, will file our briefings towards the end of this month. And for anybody who's listening in this room or on Facebook, we believe we're going to prevail in that lawsuit, even though they picked that fight with us, but we believe we're going to prevail. We feel very good legally. That's not just me pumping up a little bit here. That is our lawyers telling us we're going to, we feel really good about the lawsuit. Secondly, the state of New Mexico sued the Department of Defense. So they sued us, and we sued back. That lawsuit, amongst many others, got combined in a broader lawsuit in South Carolina. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer. I can't explain all of this very well, but from the law side. But we got our lawsuit moved to South Carolina. I was just there 2 weeks ago to listen to the arguments in that lawsuit. We have fantastic attorneys representing the state of New Mexico, and we look forward to hopefully some early decisions in favor of the state of New Mexico. Our case, even though there's I'm going to say about 500 cases combined, our case is moved to the very top. Again, we have good lawyers involved in this, and I'm optimistic that our case will proceed and that the federal government will receive a judgment for damages to pay the state of New Mexico. And if that were to occur, that would be to both remediate the groundwater, clean up the land, all the damages that have occurred, including the natural resource damages, to bring really Curry County and Clovis back up to pre-contaminant levels, pre-release from the Department of Defense. There's a number of folks in this room who have cases also in that South Carolina case, so I know there's additional lawsuits that are all combined there as well. So that really briefly, and probably not as well as a lawyer could do, covers the legal issues facing the state of New Mexico, and more importantly, Perry County and Clovis. I just want you to know that the commitment that the state has to this community has never wavered, and I think it is, again, a moment in which we ask ourselves every day at the Environment Department, why us? Why are we being singled out as New Mexicans for our environment, our water, our economy, our way of life, when nobody else around the country has faced that? And I'm not the one to answer that question, but I would love the Department of Defense to answer that question, actually. What is it that what is it that the Department of Justice and Department of Defense have against the people of Clovis? I think it's a fair question. So I covered PFAS blood testing, I covered the drinking water testing, I covered our litigation. Let me turn to you, or let me give one more comment maybe about what we just heard. While I do think there is some sincerity in what Cannon Air Force Base just covered in terms of the on-site cleanup or on-base monitoring and pilot project, I think there's accuracy in what they stated. If you listen to a few of the things that they covered, there's off-site monitoring wells, but not off-site remediation happening. So I still contend to this day that after 5 years of polluting the groundwater, there has not been any cleanup off base of PFAS from the groundwater that has migrated under that fence line and moved to the various properties. It's not been cleaned up. What I think Cannon has said a couple times, I think I count 3 times they tried to now get access to various dairy farms to do some monitoring for the ultimate goal of remediation. There was a question in the chat that said, to some degree, I'm paraphrasing, are you coordinating that monitoring and remediation with the New Mexico Environment Department? I'm the cabinet secretary of that department, and the answer is no, we're not being coordinated. This is one of the first times that I've had the opportunity to listen to their presentations since the last time they've done this. They may be talking on occasion to my staff, but there is no regular routine sharing of information because they contend through their lawsuit that we don't have the authority and we are a member of the public just like you are with respect to this cleanup that they're monitoring for on base and monitoring and looking to monitor for on the dairy farms off base. So even though we are a regulator and charged by the legislature to ensure that groundwater and drinking water is safe, this federal polluter is telling us that we don't have that authority as the Environment Department. So I just want to be really clear to you that I don't have all the answers that they have because they're not sharing all the answers and all the data with us that they're collecting. So with that caveat, let me turn to the group that's here and see what questions you may have. And again, just as a reminder, there's a Facebook stream happening, so if you'd rather not ask your question on Facebook, with an audience virtually watching, totally understand, and we'll turn that off at some point and still continue our discussions here. And Kate, this gentleman right here in the blue shirt, to your left.
I'm really hoarse, pardon me. My name is Vance Dewey. I really do appreciate what the state of New Mexico is doing for the blood testing, for the water testing. We haven't been tested in 6 years. It was 6 years ago when we were tested, and the state did it, then the government did it. But my question is, it sounds to me like you listened to this presentation tonight, that they're gonna remediate this water on base and pump it back into the aquifer with or without your permission, with or without a permit. How can they do that?
Good question, and there's lawsuits involved that say you have to consult with us and we have the regulatory authority to require you to seek permits from the state of New Mexico. By the way, you know, it was I recall that you were at our public meeting last time we were here a couple months ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was a result of people who came to that public meeting saying we want our well water tested, that I went back to the office and we found, my appropriators are sitting here. We moved money around to say, hey, the community really asked for this. The Department of Defense is not testing private wells, is not buying filtration systems. I think you actually changed your filter for $432, if I remember correctly. But it locked in that night when I heard you speaking. And I went back and said, we have to find money for this. We can't leave this community out there. If the Department of Defense told us in 2019, hey, nothing to see here, we've tested everybody's private well and we're maintaining those filtration systems, and then the community showing up 5 years later saying that's not true, well, that's exactly why we put the money behind the well water testing. I agree with you that if they're going to back to your question, if they're going to pump water out under the base in the southeast corner of the base, treat it to remove PFAS, and you'll note that they said that they're cleaning it up to what Air Force or DOD guidance tells them it should be. Well, I can tell you that that's 70 parts per trillion. They're not cleaning it up to what EPA's drinking water standard is, which is 4. So just remember 70 and 4. They're at 70, EPA's at 4. And then they're pumping it back into the groundwater on base. You saw the direction in which that plume was moving. It's going to go right over here to Highland Dairy next and continue on from there. So getting it down to 70 doesn't do anything to protect people who are drinking it. And if I'm remembering my math right, and sorry, this fires me up, by the way. This really does get me quite frustrated that our own federal government is the polluter we're talking about. The people who should be leading by example are making the community have to figure out how to deal with a David and Goliath kind of scenario. But when you treat that water and it is above the EPA drinking water standard, and you put it back in the ground, and then I think you have the audacity to say that if PFAS is in people's blood, that there's a host of consumer products that could have gotten it there. Let me give you this example. Art, I hope you don't mind, but I think if I'm remembering the math right, the filtration water that we're feeding dairy cows at Highland Dairy was 3,500 times today's drinking water standard. So those cows are drinking water that was 3,500 times the drinking water standard. And you're going to say that because of your Teflon pans, or because you're using dental floss that has PFAS in it, that could be contributing to PFAS in your blood, when the groundwater contains 3,500 times the drinking water standard. I'm sorry, that's like going into the doctor's office and saying I have a splinter in my finger, and they say let's remove your arm. I think it's just ridiculous to say that consumer products are contributing to PFAS in groundwater or in people's blood when the base is releasing and still using AFFF or PFAS contaminant or PFAS foams that are continuing to get in the groundwater. So I apologize for being long-winded, but I agree with your sentiment that the Environment Department should have jurisdiction over what's injected after it's been treated. Period. And we contend we do.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. One of my concerns is we're talking about long-term remediation. And I'd like for you to tag base with the people here and give them a little update as to what the legislators, the state of New Mexico here in eastern New Mexico, have been conversing with you about. Me and you have had some firsthand talks about providing drinking water to the households that are in the area, and not only in maybe the map area, but the houses that would stand some kind of chance to have PFAS move into their area. So we're talking south of Brady, west of Wheaton, all the way down to County Road. I can't remember which one it is now, but we're talking a big area so that everybody's home is safe to use the water, where they don't have a risk. And not only a risk, but the stress that has been going on through the community, their property values being affected. So I'd like for you to touch base on that and tell them how we're working together as a team with your help, and what we plan to do as far as the monetary part of it and the mechanics part of it, how we're working with that Corps and the county. Lance has been real supportive on this, our county manager, our county commissioners, so if you could touch on that.
Yeah, and I think you just touched on that a little bit. But I appreciate you. I appreciate that question. I appreciate the county being here as well. Thank you. So, let's look at what do we have to triage first, and that's why we're doing the well water testing. Again, we will test your well water, and our next step after we get those results is to put filtration systems on your home. So that's the acute triage. That's what we want to do with PFAS coming into your home through your groundwater. Secondly, once we get that underway, and it is getting there. Secondly, through the leadership of your representatives, your county here in eastern New Mexico, we've been working with them and with EPCOR to get a cost on what it would be to run public water lines out to rural parts of Curry County to give them that opportunity to get onto public water versus the groundwater, or at least the groundwater that may be contaminated. So that's about $8 to $10 million. And while that's a big price tag for any of us personally, that is not such a big price tag for the state of New Mexico. And we are in discussion with how could we, through the next 60-day legislative session that starts in January, ensure that we have an appropriation that would come to Curry County of about $8 to $10 million to run the lines from EPCOR out to the residents that Representative Zamora just indicated. That would take some time, but again, our first goal is to get the well water tested, get filtration systems installed, know that your water is safe as a result of those actions, and then get that EPCOR line underway and moved out to put people on public water. Now, I'll just tell you one thing, because I know you. I just know you're thinking it's funny. When I lived in a rural part of then Colorado, if you were on well water, you didn't want city water. I get it. I get that there's something about starting to go from your well and your septic to your utility and your sewer. Like I understand that. Like I'm not saying that because I've never experienced it. I mean, you could even get my street paved. I mean, people were like, I'll just get a bigger 4x4. And I'm like, we could think about maybe getting the street paved here and there. But I understand that psychological piece. But I will tell you that in a situation like this, with the more science we start seeing published around these chemicals, the more I would say, please don't resist what the state is trying to do, which is get you on the safe, reliable public water. It's going to take some kitchen table discussions, and I get it. But we're going to continue to promote this solution, because what I didn't hear tonight from the Department of Defense is we have the money, we have the access agreements in place, we have the remediation technology purchased, and we're going to start doing this next week in Clovis. All basic. I didn't hear any of that. I heard nothing, not a word. So until they take responsibility and get the PFAS levels down to below scientific-based, not political-based drinking water standards, please consider, when we get to this point, having an F-core tie-in. Just please consider it. I'm not saying you're signing up tonight to say yes. I'm just saying, asking you, please consider it.
All right. Yes, Walter.
There you go. Mr. Secretary, given the fact that EPA has declared PFAS a hazardous waste simply, how do we hold harmless owners of property that's contaminated?
So EPA is, I'm not going to word salad this, but EPA did declare PFAS, certain PFAS chemicals a hazardous substance under the Superfund law. That was extremely helpful for us because we were able to file damages claims in our court case, which I still believe are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it'll be up to the judge, but I believe that is exactly what we needed to have happen. So I just want to say that was a good thing. In terms of for those who are what I'll call a passive receiver, in other words, you weren't using a FFF or firefighting foams, you just happened to live next door to the person who was, meaning the Air Force. You are not brought into that litigation. You're not the one who caused the pollution. You're a passive receiver, an innocent bystander, somebody who just so happens to be receiving that pollution. So you're not the target of any kind of regulatory action or liability, and that's where that term passive receiver comes in. The dairies, the same thing. They're the passive receiver. Wastewater treatment plants that are eventually treating, when you flush the toilet, if you don't have septic, and it's going down to a wastewater treatment facility, they're the passive receivers of that PFAS contamination. So they've all been held harmless. They're not involved in the litigation. So does that get to your question? Yeah, and that's the stance we've taken. Now, we are ensuring with the dairy industry, we are ensuring that milk products continue to be safe by a series of testing the watering, the feed wells, and making sure that if the cows aren't drinking PFAS, then they're not making that they contain PFAS at any measurable levels. We're still doing that kind of work, but again, our eyes are very clear as to where the AFFF is coming from, where the PFAS is coming.
So everybody heard tonight, Cannon Air Force Base is not forthright about the contaminated wells off the base. There's more than 3. There's hundreds of wells. They're not being forthright with the contamination location because there's landfills that they put PFAS waste in over the years. They spent $72 million and they could have spent $100,000 on 720 wells off-site and be cleaning it right now and have money left over. They're drilling wells within 50 foot of existing irrigation wells, encroaching on water rights, and they're not working with you at all. The state's lethargic on the water rights. That needs to be looked into. You answered my question on if a farmer's pumping PFAS out of his wells on his property and it's contaminated, is that illegal? So if I wasn't a farmer, it would be illegal, correct?
Yeah, I would say if you were disposing of PFAS, you're dumping PFAS onto the land in New Mexico, we would come after you. And I'll just tell you all that, the big box furniture stores, Lazy Boy, Furniture Row, these kinds of stores, you can go in and buy a little hand sprayer, like 1 pound, probably like $70, and take it home and spray your furniture with these same kind of chemicals. When we found in Albuquerque that they were throwing those containers in the dumpster and washing them out on the ground, we cited them under our hazardous waste provisions, and they agreed and they settled with us and stopped that behavior, if you will. It's only the Department of Defense that in the history of these hazardous waste laws has challenged the state of New Mexico's authority for effectively polluting groundwater. So even the private sector agrees that we have this authority when the Department of Defense does not.
Thank you for that. And the last question I have is there's hundreds of millions of dollars out there for emergent contaminants. Get money. And I know the state's getting some of that, and they're going to work on some projects. But there's no money out there for homeowners, farmers who have contaminated wells, going to put filters on it. And I was wondering if the state could help us there somehow. And I realize that they have lawsuits and they're waiting for money that's coming in, but we got the problem today. There's dairies, there's households, and there's farmers that are downstream, not just the ones right next to the Cannon Air Force Base, but there's other farmers and homes downstream. And as this plume continues to move, it's going to be like the fuel contamination in leaky gas tanks. And the state has funds, and they fund that every year. And me and Walter talked about it, and probably have to speed on that. But is there any way the state can help existing people who have filters, contaminated filters, who are running filters? Like Daniel made a comment at the last meeting that I went to. He's cleaned more PFAS than Cannon Air Force Base ever thought about. And so it's a big expense for us, and we were hoping that the state can maybe this session can do something with this.
Yes, I appreciate your question, and I'm like, the gears are turning, and how do we navigate that in terms of both finding the money and getting it to what I'll call private homeowners, landowners, businesses, etc. Right? There's a little bit of a anti-donation kind of aspect in the state constitution, and I don't mean to say it's a little bit like we've started. I'm just saying that there are some roadblocks to that. to that question in the state constitution itself. However, I think the aspect of what we're doing in our litigation to seek damages, and I am sincerely for the first time optimistic that we might start getting favorable judgments in those cases, because it's just taken a long time to get to this point. The court system moves slow, but we're now at a really good inflection point in those matters. That combined with the monies that we've been able to allocate for drinking water tests and filtration systems does give me some hope that maybe we can find some ways to take those damages and think about how we can put them into a fund. Let me just give you instead of being sort of speculative, when we finally settled the Gold King mine matter, remember that when it came down from Colorado, that yellow down the Animas River, all that mine waste came into New Mexico in 2015. We settled that matter and we're able to take some of those funds and reinvest them into the community for things like tourism and outdoor recreation, like industries that really got hurt from those from that spill. So that there's a model out there, Art, that sort of is one that maybe we could look at to bring the money into the community to help the businesses and the residents who are hurt by it. But let me just end your question with this one statement. Here's a business owner and a resident talking to state government about how the state can help, and we want to do that. I wouldn't be here if I thought we couldn't. And who's not, again, in the room at a public meeting is the polluter who caused the problem that you have to deal with as a business owner, as a resident, and that I have to deal with as state government. Right? I mean, there's a three-legged stool here, but this one isn't our sitting on if the other party isn't here with a check. And I think that's reprehensible.
This isn't really a question, more of a statement. Art brought it up. By the way, I'm Daniel Vanderdusen, Ridge and Dairy. And the amount, I checked today before I came, how many gallons of water I have filtered on our dairy, and it's 346 million gallons as of today. And we've been filtering for 5.5 years now. And it's just asinine that we could be a dairy farm and set up filtration within months of really hearing about from the time we got tested to getting it in, filtering. The Air Force Base just, I'm kind of skipping to the choir here, but haven't filtered 1 gallon of water as far as I know. And the dairy farm has done 346 million gallons, right? So, like I said, not a question, it's more of a statement for people to realize that we were able to do it. It cost a lot of money, but they should be able to do something about a lot quicker.
And that's all at your own cost, is that correct?
Yeah, it's all out of our own pocket.
Yeah, so I would, for the dairies that are not only protecting, that are not only running their business protecting our food, ensuring that we have safe dairy products, so thank you for that. You're also performing a pump and treat, if you will, to your point that you're doing that. Air Force, 346 million gallons versus no gallons on basin. The cost you're incurring, I would love to understand, I would love to have those numbers so that we can continue to argue in court that this is what it costs our dairy industry, those are costs against your bottom line. Those are costs that other dairies around the country are not facing. Those are costs that the Air Force is paying for in other cities and states, such that their industry doesn't have to pay for it. Those are costs that, you know, you won't get back unless somebody's going to argue for you to get them back, right? Unless either you litigate or we litigate. So when I constantly say that this is a problem for our water, this is a problem for our health, this is a problem for our environment, I never forget to say this is also a problem for our economy. Because how do you compete on a level playing field if the polluter is passing their responsibility over to you, and then you have to compete in the dairy market, right, around the country? I'm at a loss for words, and that's clearly kind of hard to make me have a loss for words, but thank you for what you're doing, and let's not forget the dairy farmers who are doing the work of the federal government.
Thank you.
Jim, again, thank you for what the state of New Mexico is doing, and you're right. The Air Force Base should be the one standing up here tonight saying what they're going to do, and how they're going to help, and how they're going to remediate, and how they're going to filter. I can't believe the cost some of these guys have already put forth on what they're doing. And you heard it tonight. They've spent $73 million on this pilot project that they're not even sure it's going to work. It's a pilot project. The $73 million, how far would that have gone for all you guys that are filtering and trying to save your businesses? And I don't know if you caught it tonight, but they're talking about these monitoring wells that they're drilling on county roads, and there's about 6 landowners that they're trying to get permission from. But they also went on to say, we need these permissions to drill these monitoring wells so that we can determine where the biggest pollutant is, so that we can begin remediation. And we're going to remediate through these wells. Did you get that?
Yeah, I'm again entirely frustrated in so many different ways. But let me. I'm also entirely optimistic. I'm optimistic about our lawsuit in the 10th Circuit, where they picked a fight and they're going to lose it. I'm optimistic about our lawsuit in South Carolina, where we picked a fight and we're going to win it. I'm also optimistic about, having a plan for getting people's water safe, both well water and moving them onto public water. I'm optimistic that we're going to win those damages and make Region and Highland and everybody else whole. I just feel very optimistic that we're going to continue to move forward, and we're going to teach people how to treat us who haven't treated us equitably compared to every other base community around the country. And I'll just offer you that if I'm going to be here in the area for the next couple days. I intentionally kept my schedule open for tomorrow afternoon and evening. If you are interested in having more of a one-on-one conversation, I am an art business. I'll come to your backyard. There might be a beer involved, but we're still live, so I shouldn't say that. But if you're interested in potentially, meeting one-on-one, I am happy to come to your home. I'm happy to come to your business. I'm happy to sit down and talk with you at a coffee shop. Whatever it is wherever you're most comfortable, I will be there. So after this meeting, whether you're in the room or here in Clovis and on the Facebook Live stream, please just see me. I'm very much interested in understanding how this is affecting you, not just economically and business-wise, but how it's affecting you and your health. What are you should I continue breastfeeding? What do I do with all the wells around me, even though I'm filtering my water? What do I do when they're irrigating crops or fields around me? Those to me are the hardest calls, because those are real life calls. Those are real life moments. Like, I do take for granted in Albuquerque when I turn my water on. I do. That everything's going to be good and safe. And that's a psychological burden and an emotional toll on this community that the rest of New Mexico doesn't think about. We really don't. So I want to be here and spend some time with you all if you'll have me. So with that, I don't know if there's any more questions, but we can maybe start to cut the Facebook. Thank you, Facebook folks, for joining us. And we'll continue to be here to answer a few more questions.